you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Blue Project. I am excited here to have on with me today Deborah Green. Deborah is a retired public safety dispatcher from El Dorado County Sheriff's Department. And we talk a lot about the things that we say while we're talking about wellness and PTSD and officer suicide, a lot of things that we deal with. So we always talk about our police officers, but we talk about our first responders also, which includes our dispatchers, our firefighters, our nurses, our doctors who are on the front lines in the hospitals. So once in a while, I like to have somebody on here who's not generally what we want to consider law enforcement, but is law enforcement, because she is the one out there. She has done the job. She's been on the other side of that radio and being the people that we count on when we are out there and it's dark, who have a voice for us. So Deborah, welcome. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project. I'm so happy to have you today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
So I'm going to let Deborah tell you a little bit more about herself. She has a little varied background. So she's out there in California. So Deborah, why don't you tell our guests a little bit about how you came to be and why you're here.
How I came to be. Well, let's go back in the Wayback Machine to 1986 when I joined the California National Guard as a communication specialist. Then later became a military police officer and had my one and only deployment in 1992 at the LA riots.
Wow.
And during that time, I was also going through the academy with Sacramento Police Department as a dispatcher. So kind of overlapped my time there. Spent about 11 months with Sacramento Police Department. Was released on probation as I wasn't what you would call fast enough for their department. I mean, it's not a huge city, but it's a big city. And just wasn't quite the fit for them. Then 2 years later, I got hired with El Dorado County and was with them for 27 years. So it was I liked the dispatching. I just wasn't the right fit for that department. So, you just go and find which one you fit with, and there it went.
Hey, I get that. Sometimes the shoe don't fit, and you got to find a better one. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we all do that in our careers as we move along, right?
Yeah.
So all that time that you've been in, El Dorado County, I'm sure you've dealt with a whole lot, because that's a lot of years to be on the radio.
And with El Dorado County, it kind of ranges the gamut. Part of the county is in an rural area. Extreme rural area. We have national forests and things like that, but then you go into a more of a suburban type situation. So we kind of run and working with other agencies. So we worked with Forest Service, state parks, highway patrol. So we kind of ran the gamut. We also dispatched not only for law enforcement when I first started, but we also had fire dispatch at the very beginning. And then we dispatched for Department of Transportation and Animal Control at night. So it was very different than being down in Sacramento. and soup to nuts. I mean, we had everything. Cows in the roadway, you know, Forest Service search and rescue calls, and then your typical urban stuff, which, you know, well, I guess typical alarm calls, shootings,
No, I guess.
stabbings,
No, I
kind
know
of,
what you mean.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that's usual for that, but you know, people don't realize how things work. But yeah, so it
Right.
was quite an interesting career, to say the least.
So people have an idea. So if we're talking about California, because it's pretty big,
Yes.
what was El Dorado County closest to that people would know about?
So El Dorado County borders Sacramento County to the
Okay.
so we went from Sacramento County all the way to the Nevada state line. So we covered South Lake Tahoe also. And then kind of, so yeah, so we're kind of central. It was central eastern California, if that makes any sense.
Okay. No, it gives me a better idea. Once you say like the Tahoe and Nevada area, kind of puts you in a little, just gives you a little an idea of where it is. Because a lot of my listeners like, I'm an East Coast guy, so like I've been to California, but you know, you only go to certain areas and you're like, they drop you and you stay a little bit and then you just fly out. You don't kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
I've never really toured California. So.
And a lot of people live in smaller states too, so it's not like, yeah, we don't know everybody in Los Angeles.
Yes, right.
We're far removed.
I'm in little bitty Delaware. Like we know everybody from one end to the other in Delaware.
Yeah, so it's a little different. So we were far removed from LA, so it's
Gotcha.
but we're closer to San Francisco, I guess you would say.
So one of the reasons that we have Deborah on here is one of the things that we talk about, obviously, is we're all about first responders, mental health. And, you know, Deborah said she's a first responder mental health advocate. She speaks a lot about the first responder mental health and officer wellness, which is what we discussed. But one of the things, like when we were talking about this, Deborah put out there that during her career, you know, as a dispatcher, herself had experienced some of these traumas and some of these issues, and she talks about them. So how about, Deborah, we kind of go into like what made you start, you know, what are some of the things that kind of gave you that, you know, PTSD,
Oh my gosh.
I guess, feelings and the other things in your life? Because obviously we know that you get it a lot vicariously through what's going on in the street. Like you might be sitting behind a terminal, but you're hearing all of that. And we discuss, a lot of times we discuss vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue and things like that. So I think you're a great person to kind of explain how that manifests itself into people, because you've experienced in your life.
Oh my gosh, yes. So you kind of, where people just say we're just on the phone. Yeah, we're just on the phone, but we're also listening to what is going on. So I personally answered phone calls where the first thing that they're yelling at me is, my brother killed my father, or the mom that is screaming, and it's such a different scream when they found their child dead. And things like that, because you're not seeing it, you have to make up that you're seeing it like a movie in your head, I guess you would say, you know, because you're trying to imagine the situation. And because you have this traumatic call, you don't, how do I explain this? In dispatch, we go from call to call to call. So as soon as the deputies are there handling that, I'm answering the next call. I don't have time to process what I just went through. And at the time when I was hired back in the 90s, mental health wasn't a thing. So you were told to just suck it up. And so you learn to shove all those feelings down and have kind of a disassociated thing thing when you answer that phone. You kind of disassociate yourself from everything so that you can handle that call professionally. And then, and then you're crying your eyes out on the way home, you're crying on the way to work, and you're not realizing that you've just experienced this trauma that's caused something,
Mhm.
and anytime back then, even up into 2010, anytime you mentioned mental health and maybe needing to go see a psychiatrist, that was a bad thing.
Right.
Maybe you shouldn't be in this job, and so
Mhm.
it just kind of, it you stuff it down, you stuff it down, and they basically say the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah, you have that one call that just, you know it is
Right.
your that's
Yeah.
what messes with your mind, and what makes it that you can't work anymore, rather
Yeah. So
than.
one of the things that we discuss a lot. I mean, and I put it out there. And it's the same thing that you're talking about. As I call it, your mental closet. I mean,
Mhm.
you stuff all that stuff in the back, in the back, in the back. Because sooner or later, you can't put any more in that closet. It's like shoving old clothes, or you're like cleaning up, and sooner or later, you open the door and there's no more room, and you're
Exactly.
trying to push that door shut, but it's not going to happen. So I think you're explaining that just perfectly. And it lets people see that we do that. I mean, we've done it. I've done that
Mhm.
myself in this career, but you're doing it also from the dispatchers and the radio person's point of view. So it's no different. They're telling you the same stuff they're telling us, like suck it up and move on.
Exactly.
And we're trying to change that. But I think what you're trying to do from your end is fabulous, because it's showing everyone that it's not just those out on the street. You guys are also dealing with that and
Exactly.
having to, and I think that's one of our problems, and is that even back then, that fear of being, saying that you need help, or wanting to go get help, or just wanting to talk to someone. I don't think I want to call it even help. You just want to be able to get rid of that stuff that you got stored in your brain, and do it in a productive manner, but you're unable to do that because of the fear.
Exactly. Fear
So,
of getting written
yep.
up, fear of getting fired, fear of losing trust with your coworkers. I mean, it was there, and it shouldn't have been.
Hmm.
Going back, I should have been in therapy from day one.
No, I believe you. We all say that now. Like we should be. We should be allowing that to be a norm now, right? I mean,
Exactly.
people should learn from the things that we dealt with. But I want to get into how you kind of started to feel like you needed to purge that stuff, to clean out your mental closet, so to speak, to start purging those things that were troubling you.
Well, 2015, I was diagnosed with a congenital. Well, I knew I had an issue with my heart from birth, but in 2015, I went in and they diagnosed me with a faulty aortic valve that was in severe stenosis. It turned out that I had a heart defect. So I went in April of 2015 and had open heart surgery to replace my aortic valve. Um, from that, I developed what's called post perfusion syndrome, which is something that happens to people that are on bypass when they have heart surgeries. And
Wow.
it escalates any depression, anxiety, mental health symptoms that you have by tenfold. So I became
Wow.
very depressed, very anxious. Probably had PTSD from the surgery alone, because I mean, they're cracking your chest open and manhandling your heart. So
Right.
you
Right.
have the physical PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'd have a little anxiety over that.
So, and then I went back to work. So
Oh goodness.
and then had two wonderful coworkers that said, "Hey, something's not right here. I was having issues with the supervisor I had at the time, who was kind of abusive also, which made everything worse along with that. So I started my mental health journey in 2015, and went to see a psychologist, um, but spent the majority of my time during the therapy sessions explaining the hierarchy of a law enforcement department, because she didn't understand it, rather than saying,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand, but just keep talking, She wanted me to. So
Gotcha.
I kept it, trying to explain, because I had managers, I had lieutenants, I had captains, I had the sheriff, I had supervisors, and she just didn't understand any of that. So, but along my journey, I finally found my one therapist that I've had for several years now, and she's just wonderful. She doesn't care. She's just like, just talk.
Mm-hmm.
So she's really great. But I had that mental health journey, and I also found a in-person support group that was met weekly. So I did about 3 years with that, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go out, get amongst people, um, and talk. And they weren't law enforcement. It was just a general um, mental health group. I believe they call it IOP. It's not inpatient; it's outpatient intensive therapy
Okay.
support group, and um, that stopped. They stopped that back in 2019. So I went back to
Mm-hmm.
my regular therapist, and then in 2019, I had my Oscar involved shooting, um, October 23rd, where I sent units out. They were ambushed by subjects out in a marijuana grow, and one of them lost his life. And that
Mm-hmm.
was where it got worse.
Okay.
Developed anger issues, a severe. My anxiety just went off the charts. Um, had another supervisor that was abusive that sent me down the disciplinary route,
Mm-hmm.
until a supervisor that wasn't mine said, "Hey, stop. We're going to get her some help, because that's what she needs."
Right.
And went on the workman's comp route. And my psychiatrist signed me off of work, October of 2020. So I went almost a year, um, before they
Wow.
just said, "Nope, you can't do this anymore."
Gotcha. I think you touch on a. I want to go backwards a little bit because you touch on something that I think we try to really spend a lot of time on, and that is the discussion about us being able to find people who kind of understand. And you touched on that in the beginning. Is I think we're getting to a nice point through a lot of organizations, FOP being one of them, and some others, Survive First, a couple others that I'm well aware of, that are trying to identify therapists who are who are able to have that cop speak, I want to call it, that thing that you know we talk about it all the time. And Deborah, I mean, even being a dispatcher, I still say cops speak with dispatchers because you know the way we talk and the
Oh,
way we handle things.
exactly.
Because
I think the term now is culturally competent.
yeah, culturally, yeah. Let's change words. I'm sorry. Yes, I get it. Culturally competent or whatever. But what it is, plain and simple, is knowing what we're saying without us having to say it is pretty much the easiest way to put it. Because we have our way of speaking, just like any other profession, and sometimes not having if we're what I experienced, and it's probably the same thing that you experienced for a while, is I was going through therapists like I would be, going to the grocery store, because as soon as you start talking, if you know how we are, I mean, if you're not understanding what I'm saying right off the bat, then you're making me work hard for it. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, next. I, I don't have, I just want to be able to, like you said, talk.
Correct.
And finding these people, and it's getting much better now, which is fabulous. I think it's great in the last few years to find these individuals and these clinicians who are really dedicated to learning how to understand what we're talking about when we're speaking in that manner, and not just for cops, but for firefighters and everybody else, because it makes a difference. It makes a big difference. I
Oh,
don't know about you, but I felt like it was like, am I ever going to find someone who's going to understand what the hell I'm talking about?
oh, exactly. And it's such a weight lifted off your shoulders when you don't have to explain things to somebody. They just say, just talk. I don't care
Right.
about all the other stuff. Just talk. We'll figure this out later. I have a great relationship now with my therapist. I send her information when I get it regarding um, being more culturally competent. I just had a friend of mine write a book about therapists and veterans that I sent to her because
Mm-hmm.
the system that she's in it's a HMO.
Okay.
So it's called Kaiser Permanente. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's kind of an all-inclusive medical system that includes the mental health, which is fabulous. So I don't have to pay out of pocket for my mental health care right now, which is fabulous.
Yes, yes. Can get quite
It
expensive.
can get
Yes, it
very
can.
expensive, but it's nice that she allows me to share this information with her so that she can pass it along to her colleagues because there's more and more people in law enforcement or first responders that are using this system, you know,
Right.
and it only benefits people, you know, to be aware of all these first responders now that are coming into the system because before we weren't. It was, shove it down, suck it up, don't go to mental health professionals. And now there's all these people coming into the mental health for mental health care. And we need those therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists that know how to navigate us.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you make a great point with. So I want you to kind of go back. I mean, if it's okay, about feeling like, so you were in that, between that point where you're trying to do things, and I think you touched on something that we all kind of did, as far as I'm concerned, because I did the same thing. Whereas you start becoming, you start becoming having issues, but people start looking at it as a employee problem. They look at it
Right.
as you being a disruption, or you being a disciplinary issue. Well, you're not that, because you're reacting and responding to things that are going on, within your body and within yourself and within your mind. But you're traveling now that journey of not only trying to find help on your own, but you have an incident which kind of kicks things off even more, and somebody's looking at you as a disciplinary problem,
Hmm.
rather than like you having the gentleman or the person who said, hey, hold on a minute. But before you got to that point, maybe I think a lot of people out there might be feeling the same way you do, to kind of expand on how that kind of led you to feel, and how long that process was that you had people doing that.
Well, I mean, I had the incident in October, and it affects the whole department. So everybody's going through, you know, all the grief, all the trauma. Um, and this specific supervisor that came in, she was of that, shove it down and don't talk about it and that type of
Hmm.
thing. And I started showing, I had severe anger issues towards her. She'd come
Okay.
up and say, tell me something. And I'm like, just hold on, let me get what I need done here. But then she would get what I call butt hurt because she felt offended because I said,
Right.
hey, stop a second, let me finish this and then we can discuss this. But as soon as I did that, I got written up. And it just kept going from there. And when you're in the middle of all of this, you don't realize what's going on. You need that a person from the outside to go, hey, something's wrong with you. Let's get you, fixed. And even though I was still in therapy at the time, even my therapist didn't realize the extent that the PTSD was.
Sure.
Just because, when I would talk to her, it was all kind of the same kind of stuff that I was talking to her about. And I did make an emergency appointment right after the incident happened, to go in and just talk to somebody. And then I also had a friend who was peer support at another department. And her department was right near where my therapist was. So after I finished with the therapist, I went over for another 2 hours of kumbaya and crying my eyes out
No.
with my friend with peer support. So it wasn't like I wasn't trying to get help. I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't realize to the extent that it actually went.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sure you're pretty grateful for that individual who kind of stepped in and went, hold on a minute, like let's take
yeah.
a break. And
absolutely.
Sometimes you need that. I call it's not the literal slap in the face, but it's the figurative slap in the face that somebody needs to look at you and go, come on, what are you doing? They're just kind of trying to shake it out of you and going, you need to find that help. But I think by that time you had at least that knowledge that you were already working towards, helping yourself. It's just when something else piles back on.
Right.
I liken it to being an alcoholic. I mean, and anything else that you're trying, or stopping smoking, or whatever you're trying to not do. Like, you're going to have times where you slip and fall. You're going to have times where you revert back to whatever it was, or them old feelings or stuff, because it's an everyday process. And we talk about that all the time. This is not going to be a magic pill.
No.
And I think when when we talk about being advocates for mental health for first responders and law enforcement, I think the biggest thing that we say and we do is to try to say, like, this is every day. Like, you're going to have to fight this battle every single day. Now, it'll get a little easier every day, because you'll start to be able to recognize when you're going there, and recognize the things that are triggering you, and being able to handle them better. But right off the bat, it's going to be hard.
Oh,
It's going to be very hard.
I still wonder how bad I would have been had I not already been in therapy when this trauma hit me.
No, I'm sure it would have been a lot.
I mean,
you
it
knew
just,
how to handle it. Yep.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and I was already on medications. I was already in therapy. I knew what I needed to do, but it just, because of how bad this trauma was, and I can't even begin to think what it was for the guys out at the incident itself. There's, of the four people, 1, 2, 3, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4,
No,
the
you're
five
good.
of us. So 4 deputies. One actually was a ride along who also
Oh,
got
wow.
shot. But he was from another department. But out of the 5 of us, so the dispatcher and 4 deputies, none of us lasted a year.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm not saying that it was the department's fault, but the immediate care that we got, and peer support and critical incident management and all of that right at the beginning was fabulous. It was the extended care that fell short.
I see. So they kind of did their check boxes in the beginning,
Right.
and said, okay, we're gonna get you all separate. We're gonna get you talking to people, and then it kind of just fell off.
Right. There was no, and especially
Yeah.
for me, I didn't have that support from the peer support. Nobody followed up with me. Nobody kept tabs on making sure that I was going to therapy and doing all the things. And then
Mm-hmm.
they were kind of shocked, I guess. I don't know what you want to
Wow.
call it when I
Right.
filed for workman's comp, it's like, "Oh,
Right.
wait. We forgot
Right.
about you," kind of stuff. And it's like,
Right.
okay. And I was literally the first dispatcher in that county, and actually I think in Northern California, that had gone out on workman's comp as a dispatcher for mental health
Wow.
and not a physical injury.
So, have they changed what they're doing now? Do you know what I mean,
Well,
have you kept up with people there? Are they doing better?
um it's better to talk about it, but the new administration that's up at that department is not as supportive as it was.
Oh, well, that's a shame. That's 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 a tough thing because we talk about. I think we have this pie in the sky thought when we do this that I mean we want to. I think it's sad because any of us out here doing this are doing this because we're just hoping that it makes that one change when it does. And we know it's changing in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
We know that people are advocating for better just overall health and mental wellness for their officers and their departments. But that starts at the top. And unfortunately, it's sad to hear that people don't learn sometimes from things that occur. Now, I don't know who runs that department. I'm not going to I'm not going to
No.
disparage them. I don't know them, and I don't know what they're trying to do. But I do say that it is tough that we try to look at these things and say, it does start at the top, and if the top is not supportive, or they're not doing it themselves, it makes it hard for everybody below them to to reach out,
Oh,
to even want to
absolutely.
embrace it.
And you can do so much. You can only do so much as a line staff, as those out on the roadway, out facing it, head on. You need that support from the administrations. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say we're getting there, but it's not there yet. And there's so many departments though that have changed the way they're doing things that is making a difference. But then again, you have, and not to disparage departments, but you have places like Chicago and LA and New York that have lost, and not just one or two. I mean, groups of people committing suicide.
Right.
Just just and it's not acceptable. We need
No.
to do better.
No. No. We definitely need to do better there. And as you say, it seems to be, uh, well, it is. It doesn't seem to be. It is. It's an epidemic over the last
Mhm.
few years where we have officers taking their own lives because for their whatever reason, whether it's job related, but it's personal related, but you can't separate those. I think
No.
too many times we try to separate the personal and professional. Like they always tell you, don't bring your problems to work and don't take your problems home. It's virtually impossible.
Oh,
It's you can't do that because we're human beings.
and we've had two departments in the last couple months where the officers have taken their own lives inside the actual department building. And
Mm-hmm.
one in Chicago and one in Foster City, California. And the response from Chicago was, "Hey, this has happened. We're going to look at it. We're going to see what we can do better." There was nothing from Foster City. And I hate to throw them under the
Mm-hmm.
bus, but there wasn't anything announcing it. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anything telling us who it was or celebrating that person's life, the things that they did, and what did we fail that caused him to do this. There wasn't anything on media, nor mainstream media. It was all social media where we all found out about it. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a week or two later, week later, that they finally said something. And it's like, it kind of, I don't understand this fabulous person that maybe needed a little help, that committed suicide in your building, we need to do better. And what kind of work environment was it? Because it's a smaller department in Foster City. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a big city.
Right.
So what was happening there that caused him to commit suicide inside the department's building?
Yeah, their sadness is that sometimes, and you can see this in some places, that they have that mentality that the suicide thing is not something they don't want to say it. They just don't. It can be something as simple as that, as they don't want to say it because then it would be them acknowledging that there's a problem, and that's just my guess on their end. Because we see a lot of times. I mean, even not in law enforcement, people have a problem with saying the word suicide or saying that person killed themselves. Let's call it what it is.
Exactly.
It is what it is. But usually, it can strike people so much that they don't even want to say the words. And that's the only thing that I can think that happened in that case is, people just, they have to get their gumption up to go, the person committed suicide. They just don't want to say those words.
Right.
And we have to realize that suicide is suicide and dead is dead.
Yes.
I mean, they tell us 100 times doing this job, you can't say, the person passed away or the person, like, dead is dead.
Yes.
Like, sometimes dead is reality.
Unfortunately, yes.
And suicide is becoming way too common.
It
Too
is.
common.
It's actually surpassed officer involved or on duty deaths, and that's sad. So
Well, I have a friend of mine. She's a Chicago police officer. Her name is Liz Pohl, and she does a lot of stuff with police officer suicide. And I talk to her a lot about it. And her being from Chicago, she deals with it a lot.
yes.
So it's something that we really need to try to find a way to catch a handle of. But how do you? I mean, it's very tough because we've got that stigma in our culture that still is prevalent. I mean, they still tell people to do what we started this conversation off with, to suck it up and put it behind, and I don't want to hear it, and don't cry, and don't be a little bitch, and don't do this, and don't do that, and put your big boy pants on. It's not about that.
No.
It's not about that at all. But that's a culture we need to stop.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely. Telling people that is just making whatever it is that they have going on worse. That, they're less than. Nobody's less than. And what we need to do is start at the academies and have more than 4 hours of critical incident stress management or mental health, touching on mental health. We need a whole week. And explain to them that as soon as you get out of this academy, or even before you get out of this academy, find your therapist. Start working on it. Get a therapist. Go see them 2 to 4 times a year just for a check-in. Because once you get yourself established with that person is going to know you. And when you have that critical incident, because it's not an if, it's a when. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. When you go in after that critical incident, that therapist knows you and knows what they need to do. And what you want is a culturally competent and trauma-informed therapist, somebody that knows all the treatments for trauma, or can get you those resources to get you that treatment. And that's what we need to start. And we need to start it right at the beginning. Because otherwise you're going to be, we're hemorrhaging people. We have more people leaving and dying than we have coming in.
True, very true. Well, I think you said a good point. You set a baseline, And I've never thought of it that way. You just made me think of it that way, like they do for pro athletes when they have they set a baseline for their brain function and all that stuff in case they have so they can test for a concussion or whatever. You should have that baseline because your therapist will know your baseline, and when you start talking to them, they'll be able to know when something's wrong, and
Exactly.
they'll know how to better inform you of how to deal with it. And I bring up a lot of times other people I've talked to, and that's what the great thing about this podcast is, and being able to talk to people like yourself, because I always reference back to them, and because it reminds me when some people talk about things that other people said, and that's Barbara Rubel, who I've spoken to, and Jason Palmera. They wrote a book called Living Blue, and I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it talks about that exact same thing, like having those ideas or knowing people that you can establish something to make sure that you're starting this off the correct way. That's the problem with us. I mean, it's too late for us. It's too
Yes.
late for us. When we started this back 30 years ago, like, I'm sorry, we were the generation of suck it up and move on and drive on and show your big face and put your big boy pants on. Hell, I didn't even cry at funerals for my own damn family, for Christ's sake. I was so just, I don't know what you call it, emotionally just dead.
Yeah.
That that
Disassociated.
yeah, it's just all that stuff shuts off because you shut it because your body shuts it off to protect itself. Your brain shuts it off to protect yourself. So, like, I felt bad through the years, when I'd had family pass away, and I'd be standing there like looking like a zombie, like I was just emotionally not there, not there. Or even for other things, just emotionally not there.
Oh yeah, it's
And
it's
you don't
hard to
see
be,
it.
yeah, and it's hard to be happy. It's hard to be sad. It's just you're trying to keep that middle ground, just to hold on.
Right.
I mean, they don't see the struggle that we're just doing everything we can just to remain that middle ground, to not show
Mm-hmm.
that we're weak and not show that we're broken, and to be able to do our jobs. And that's part of it. That's also a trauma.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you become distant to everything that's going on because it becomes a protection for you. But then again, everything else in your life goes numb too. That's when family don't talk to you. You start losing
Right.
friends. You start dropping marriages. You start doing whatever you're doing because you're emotionally not there for nothing.
Correct.
And and fortunately, we know this, and we have a forum to put that out nowadays. And hopefully, people listen, and hopefully, leaders listen, and other people in other places listen and say, "Start." Just what you said, and I think you hit it on the head, Deborah. Is start in the beginning. Let them know it's okay to go and seek out assistance, and it's not going to be something that they're going to lose their job over. They're not going to be criticized over it. Make it a norm. Like, we can make it a norm. You can change the culture,
Absolutely.
and you can change the culture you're not going to change the culture everywhere, but you can change the culture in your own department, in your own space. It can begin there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start that and people start seeing that, then the things like recruitment and keeping people and all that becomes easy because now they're seeing, yo, this place takes care of me.
Correct.
So I'm going to go work there. I don't care about the money. This place takes care of me. This place takes care of my family. Because I definitely don't want to see anybody going down the road that we have ended up going down.
Oh
Because
gosh, no.
unfortunately, I've lost too many years with that bullshit. Don't want to see anybody else
Absolutely.
do that.
Yeah, no. And I tried to start it, well, my last year, and just talking about my mental health, and making it a normal to say, hey, I'm on medications. I went to all these classes that my mental health department for my insurance paid for, that I can actually use in my job. So, you know coping mechanisms for anxiety and panic attacks, and depression and what else do we have? Work stress and things like
Mm-hmm.
that I was able to bring into my job to help me with my job and help deal with callers and help take somebody out of a panic attack that they were in so that I could get information from them. People don't realize that it's a win-win. You're learning
Mm-hmm.
and taking care of yourself, and you can bring this out to help your job at the same time. And another thing that I kind of try to say to people is, which would you have? The person that needs help, that is not getting help, or do you want the person that needs help, is getting help, as your backup? Which one would you want? Who do you
Right.
want on the street as your backup? The one that's going to get you in trouble and maybe get you killed, or the person that's going to help you? and
Makes a
and
lot of sense.
and I think that's where we need to say, yeah, I think I'd rather have this guy that's getting help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think you're 100% correct. I think you're 100% correct. But I think, Deborah, with people like yourself out there who are willing to tell your story, who are willing to talk about the things that you've been through, we continue to do that. It's therapy for us, actually. People don't realize that. I think
Oh, I
sometimes that the
know.
more we talk about it, that it's therapy. I mention it every time. I'll say it every time I'm on this podcast. This is my therapy. A lot of things didn't work for me. This works for me because I get to talk to people from all over the place who understand exactly what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because it comes back to what we said in the beginning. I don't have to really explain a lot to you because you've been there.
Exactly.
So you know. And a lot of what we're looking for, and I think that anybody's looking for, and if you're looking for someone to talk to or someone that wants to hear you, the people that are on this podcast are here. There's people out there who are willing to listen to you. There's people that are out there that have been through and are going through what you're going through right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not, I don't want to say we're done with it because we're not, because tomorrow something could happen and I have to look at it and I might have to take that yoga moment, I call it, and just calm down and just relax and go, hold on a minute, I know what this is and I don't want to go to the far end.
Right.
I need to keep myself here and I need to deal with it today and right now. I can't put it away. I got to deal with it right now so that it doesn't get there. And I think that's what we're all just trying to learn. So, Deborah, I'm going to give you a few seconds to leave anybody with what you like. I appreciate you being here with me today. I appreciate your story, and I would love to have you on again sometime in the future.
Oh, yeah,
And
that'd be great.
and
Well, first off, um, everybody read this book. I met him once, but and I've heard him speak, but this is the Bible for well, all first responders should read this.
Mhm.
It's Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement by Dr. Gilmartin. Fabulous book. Fabulous.
Yep.
And everybody getting into law enforcement, dispatchers, cops, firefighters, it has a lot of great things to it. I'm also involved in a online support group called The Power of Our Story. It's free for first responders, and they also put out a book called Wounds to Wisdom. 29 of our members have a chapter each in here and tells their
Awesome.
story. I suggest if you get this book, have a box of Kleenex next to you when you read it, because from the first chapter on, it was just, yeah. But do go out and get help, right? Maybe not help. Go out and get support right when you start this job. For those of you out there that are just starting out, find a therapist. If it takes 2 or 3 therapists to find your person, then do it. Because you want somebody that's going to be there when the poop hits the fan and
Mhm.
be able to help you with any treatments or just to talk that you have. If anybody wants, I'm even available to talk to if anybody needs it. I'm on Instagram at D911Green, and it has my link tree there. So you can, I have YouTube, I have TikTok, I have Instagram, I have LinkedIn and X. So there's plenty of places to get a hold of me, and I do small reels, I guess you would call them, TikToks, however you want to do it. Anytime I'm out walking. So if you don't see one for a couple days, it's because it's either raining or too hot.
There you go.
So I like to be outside and walking, and I do little inspirational stuff, and I'm always available to talk if anybody needs it.
Deborah, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. I'm gonna be looking forward to the little talking walks. I get used to that from Matt, so I'll just add you to them too. So.
There's another guy, Arjuna George. He has a podcast out of Canada, and he does some of those too. So yeah.
Nice. Well, you take care of yourself. I thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you somewhere down the road. And you stay safe, okay?
Oh yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com. And to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.